afternoon, good morning or good evening to you wherever you are joining us from, and welcome to this live panel session on international projects here at Eurie. My name is Yvonne Farrand. I'm a Director of Projects Beyond Borders International Education Consultancy, and I am the moderator of today's discussion. The theme of our panel discussion today is the Erasmus Plus Key Action 2 project, The Third Way, a new curriculum promoting social enterprise, and the role of education networks. I'm delighted to introduce to you our panel members for today's session. I'm joined by Dr. Allan, Fellow Director of Projects Beyond Borders. Allan has worked in the field of further and higher vocational education and training for 40 years. He's also worked as a consultant for the European Union, assessing applications for their lifelong learning and Erasmus programmes, as well as writing numerous successful bids. He is accompanied on our panel by Mr. David Taylor. David is the General Manager of the Businet network of higher education institutes, a position he has held for 22 years. David will introduce himself and the network further in his presentation. Before I hand over to the panel, at the end of our discussion there'll be an opportunity for me to put some questions to our panel that you might have, so I invite you to type your questions in the box beneath the screen. And I'll try and answer as many questions as time allows. So without further ado, I would now like to hand the floor over to David Taylor.
Hello, I'm just going to share my screen. Just give me 1 second. Is the role that the network plays in developing international projects and supporting our members through those projects, using the Third Way project as the vehicle to explain our actions. So we're going to start off by explaining what Businet is, the opportunity we offer, and giving you some additional information regarding that. So what is Businet? Businet is a network of higher education institutes. It's a global network established in 1987, and we're operating currently in 35 countries with 122 member institutions. The network was founded to meet the needs of those institutions, and we still try to provide that now. We look to support the members. 1 second, sorry. Sorry. Right, so we try to support our networks, our members, by promoting international activities and working as a conduit to assist our members to achieve their institutional aims. Our network is predominantly based in Europe at the moment, but we are looking to extend outside of Europe. We are very much a very practical network. We try to create situations where our members can provide opportunities for their students and for their staff. And this presentation has gone crazy. I apologize for this. This shouldn't be happening. So I'll just stop it there. Excellent. Completely. My apologies for that, ladies and gentlemen. So I will just talk it through and explain where we play, the part we play. One of the rules that Businet now adopts is to help our members in the promotion of projects. So, for example, Projects Beyond Borders, one of our members, came up with an idea regarding a project which they shared with different institutions, Businet member institutions. This was discussed initially at the 1997 Businet conference in Villamora. Based on the discussions there, the project was written by Allan and in conjunction with Thomas Kuhler in Dresden. Businet takes the role as a dissemination partner within the project. Now, this is something that the EU are looking more and more to have, someone who's responsible for the dissemination of the project, but also to try to ensure the project's sustainability at the end of the project. So this is the role that Businet plays in this project. And it's not the first time we've done this. We also did this in a project called Digicom with an institute in Vienna. We're doing it currently with a project called Entre Mental Well-Being for Entrepreneurs. So it's a role which we feel is very, very important because it supports our members, and that's what we're trying to do as a network. We try to support our members in achieving what they're trying to achieve. Within projects, our role, as I say, is to be the conduit to make the things happen. So we are the enabler, if you like. I have to say this has been not a very good presentation because of the graphics, etc. just thrown me completely. If you want more information, I would love to give you that information. My email address is available in the information you've received. But if you put your email into the chat function, I'll get back to you and I'll try to explain the network more fully. With that, I'm going to hand you over to the moderator, Yvonne Farrand. Yvonne?
Thank you, David. Sorry, just unmuting myself. That's a new one. So I'm going to hand the floor over to Dr. Allan Lawrence now to share his screen.
Okay, I'll share my screen. So yeah, my name's Allan Lawrence. As I've been previously introduced, I'm both director of Project Beyond Borders. I'm the project manager for the UK partner in the Third Way project, which is an organisation called OLC Europe, based in Manchester, and we're also members of Businet as well. And it was through the offices of Businet that this particular project was developed. And what I hope to do is explain to you just how important it is to have a network on board in a European project. This particular project, its focus was to develop a curriculum for social enterprise for institutions that have business courses. And there are 6 higher education institutes involved in the project, 3 social enterprises and the Businet network. And you can see them there on the screen. Essentially, without going through all the different Erasmus objectives and priorities, the focus of the project was to improve levels of skills, to strengthen the cooperation between the world of higher education and the world of social enterprise. And for certainly there has been a view within social enterprise that there's been a kind of lack of awareness of the importance of social enterprise, not just in higher education, but also in the economic systems across Europe. I mean, certainly in the UK, in Ireland, Italy, increasingly in Belgium, just to mention a few countries, Portugal, Spain, the social enterprise network is growing. In fact, just in the UK alone, there are 400,000 social enterprises now in operation. And the key thing about them is that they tend to be young. The CEOs and directors tend to be female, and they tend to be highly innovative. And it's that collaboration and that mutual understanding that this project is keen to promote. What we have discovered also is actually there's not a clear delineation between social enterprise and higher education anyway, because 2/3 of the higher education partners have social entrepreneurs in their teams. So it's actually quite a sort of seamless cooperation. So our intention is to create innovative learning programs, and our broad aim to reduce that perceived divide between vocational education and social enterprise. So we have some key project objectives. We have to obviously identify the needs of social enterprises and social entrepreneurs. What do they want any future training program to look like? And one of the things we were keen to promote is that the sector itself basically guides the universities and the higher education institutes towards the particular curriculum and training needs that they have. We've established a platform for communication upon which the MOOC will sit. We have a social enterprise curriculum developed as a consequence of basically consultation and negotiation with social enterprises. Our intention is to grow a network of social entrepreneurs and universities, and also to promote internship across Europe and beyond for any young person wishing to experience a social enterprise. So there are some key areas the project has key areas in which the project has worked and operated. We communicated with over 200 social enterprises across Europe. We had 2 focus groups, and both of these activities basically led us towards the ultimate curriculum of 9 modules. And right at this moment in time, the university teams are creating the MOOC and working on the different subject areas. One of the byproducts of the project is to capacity build and to encourage that collaboration between universities and social enterprises. And one of the results has been a growing network of social enterprise, which we hope ultimately will increasingly incorporate itself within the Businet structure. Also, there are opportunities for students to become involved. These particular images are from the students that actually were responsible for the logistics around the focus groups that took place in Manchester. But we also have would-be entrepreneurs joining boot camps in Portugal and Spain. And of course, ultimately, they will be the recipients of the curriculum model once it's completed. So what are the outputs? Well, they're clearly described in this way, really. We have a curriculum of 9 modules, a MOOC to basically present and host that curriculum, and we will have an internship model with accreditation, and that internship ultimately could be hopefully real exchanges or virtual. There will be 2 conferences, and there are the 2 boot camps that I referred to earlier. And just some images to show that it's an active project. Lots of ideas, lots of talking, which is what you want from a focus group. And as you can see there, the focus group included a range of people, young entrepreneurs, and some entrepreneurs that have slightly more experience, and of course the project members themselves. So why is a network like Businet so important? I mean, I like to say that, particularly from my experience in assessing Erasmus Key Action 2 projects for Brussels, that if a project can't disseminate, if it can't prove impact, if it can't show exploitation and sustainability, it essentially will die. will either die when it finishes in its funded period, or it will die at the application stage. Certainly, as an assessor, we know that dissemination and some sort of evidence that a project has longevity beyond its funding period is vitally important. And one of the experiences we have with working with Businet as a project partner is already before the project is ended, our dissemination reach has become greater than we originally anticipated. So I believe strongly that any project funded by Erasmus, or indeed by anybody else, particularly if it's from public funding, needs to have longevity, needs to have outputs that have life. So Businet has been important to us because they've devised the strategies for dissemination. They enable the dissemination to occur operationally through their own activities, including their conferences and working groups. And indeed, it's the Businet working groups themselves that generate the ideas for projects. And indeed, they generate the partners and the partnerships as well. I mean, the Third Way project, essentially, as David mentioned, came from an entrepreneurship working group, which itself includes many different universities from around Europe. Also, I think there's a change in the way that we consider dissemination going forward. I, like many people, have real concerns about the continuing role of social media as a potential dissemination platform, both Facebook and Twitter. And with Businet, you have a network that has its own entity, has its own basically existence separate of those platforms, and because of its regular events, there are over 100 universities and other organisations meeting on a regular basis, and that can be a pretty powerful dissemination platform. And of course, there are new projects on the way. We have, as David mentioned, a project of which the acronym doesn't really slip off the tongue in any easy way, Entre MWB. It's a project looking at the mental well-being of entrepreneurs. And the stimulus for this project came from some World Economic Forum meetings at Davos in 2019, where the issue of increasing mental illness and entrepreneurship was actually raised by a number of speakers at that event. And we have, starting from January the 1st of this year, a project with a number of partners, both universities, entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, and of course Businet, taking that particular project forward. And we also have another project, Virtual Plus, looking at the need for new online skills, both during the COVID pandemic and for the post-COVID future, whatever that happens to look like. And of course, at this moment in time, none of us really know. So that's a bit of a quick introduction to the projects. I wanted to go through it quickly because I'm keen, as I'm sure David is too, to hear any questions that colleagues may have. So I'll hand back to Yvonne, the moderator, to take us into the next stage.
Thank you, Allan.
I can just say there are contact details there.
Okay, thank you, Allan. We've got a few questions coming through, but the first one, a question I would just like to ask actually, would David like to give us a little bit more information about Businet and the Businet network?
Yeah, thanks, Yvonne. Yeah, I should actually have mentioned Businet was established way back in 1987, and it was at the start of the European projects. And the idea was to bring together universities who had similar interests and similar needs. But it was to be an active network, and that the network is very much an active network in so much that what we're trying to do is to create possibilities for our members to work together to create new activities. So, for example, we've broken the network, or we break the network up into different curriculum group areas, and we have 16 of those separate curriculum areas. And within those curriculum areas, they work on individual projects, individual activities for students, etc. So this project came out of, as Allan mentioned, the entrepreneurship group. So we have a group of people who are working together, who teach, who are entrepreneurs. They come together at our annual conference, or our second conference each year, which is called our Spring Workshop, to discuss issues. And that was where the seeds were sown for this project that we work together on at the current time. Businet is a membership organisation, so people do pay a membership fee. It's not a huge fee, but it gives a commitment, if you like. The people do commit to Businet, and we have some exceptionally good members. Many members have been with the network since the inception. Our president currently has been with Businet since 1987, at the first meeting at Businet. And I joined the network in 1992. So there's a lot of people who have bought into Businet over a long period of time. It's a network which we like to consider ourselves to be a family. We work together, we enjoy life together when we're at our conferences, etc. But at the end of the day, it's a productive network which helps come out with things like projects with our members, and the third way is an example of those projects. Thank you, Yvonne.
That's great, David. Thank you. First question is going to be from Darren's asked, what are the likely outcomes of the project beyond capacity building and further project outputs? Have you got any idea what the impact will be at this point? I presume that's about the third way. Allan.
Well, yeah, I mean, obviously we have the outputs as we envisage them, being the MOOC, and what we would like to see is the mainstreaming of social enterprise curriculum within the university partners, and the university partners that are involved have agreed to that. And we'd like, ultimately, through the offices of Businet and other networks that we're involved in, to see that social enterprise curriculum given greater exposure across our wider partnership. So that's certainly one direction of travel. We'd also like to see the skills and expertise that are developed by that partnership in terms of MOOC production utilised in further projects that kind of exploit that those new technical skills. And ultimately, we're keen to see the curriculum model exploited in as much as it becomes not only mainstreamed, but also maybe there are commercial spin-offs from it. I mean, I'm particularly keen to see projects have further exploitation and sustainability, and I think through a living network like Businet, that is more likely, because even when the funding dies, we can continue to promote the outputs and indeed the outcomes through the various Businet activities. So I'm pretty confident that there's longevity for this project when it ends, which actually is now February 2023, I think, because of an extension because of the COVID crisis.
Thank you, Allan. And just continue from that, you mentioned exploiting a project. What is the difference between sustainability and exploitation?
Well, my belief is that exploitation is making use of the outputs and deliverables of a project. in the early days of European projects, and I've been involved in them since 1989, I always found it quite saddening to see the products or the outputs or the deliverables sat on shelves gathering dust. So exploitation to me is particularly important, and it's making use of the outputs and deliverables once the project ends, and ensuring they have continued longevity. And sustainability is very similar, but it's the continuation of the project partnership, the continuation of some of the project aims and outputs beyond the project ending, and in that respect, the third way hopefully will continue to promote internships for students through the Businet network. It will continue to promote social entrepreneurship and curriculum for social enterprise through the Businet network as well. So that's the difference. Exploitation, making use of the outputs and deliverables. Sustainability, making sure the project's wider partnership has a life at the end of funding.
Can I add something to that, Alan? One of the things over the years, I think, with projects that I've worked on, is when the project ends, the partners very rarely get together to discuss how that continues in the future. And that's what I would consider the sustainability element. With the third wave, because all of the partners will meet anyhow within Businet, because partners are all Businet members, we will be together, we will get together, so therefore the life of the project will be extended beyond the project itself. So the sustainability element almost comes naturally when you're working with a group of people who you're going to meet on a regular basis and who are going to get together and discuss new projects, new initiatives, but they will also look after the existing initiatives and the old initiatives. Give you an example. We did a project with Businet going back to 2003. It was a 3-year project, and one or two of the members are still using some of the elements of that project now because they can, and because we all still work together. So that, it's still possible to do that. So the network actually assists with the sustainability of projects, in my opinion.
Yeah, could I add something as well to that? Because I think what also you're describing is that wonderful European term valorization, whereby through the offices of Businet, projects can come together and learn from each other and develop new ideas going forward. I mean, certainly the third way has learned through the experiences of Indigicom, the project that you've been involved in before that, and of course the new one, the entrepreneurship and mental well-being project, is learning subsequently from both of those. And it's an important concept, the fact that ultimately through the valorization of projects you can strengthen and expand and indeed diversify the network itself. Because of course one of the things that's happened is that Businet now has become a rather more diverse network than perhaps it was 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, agree.
So off the back of that, actually, a question that occurs to me is dissemination, and obviously the Businet network is really important to us in dissemination. But why is dissemination important for a project?
Who do you want to?
Alan, yeah, you can. I'll let you take that one, Alan.
Well, only because I know this. You know, this is one of my pet subjects.
Yeah.
Because I think it's vitally important that any project that involves public money, and okay, we could be talking about Erasmus, but we could be talking about structural funds or indeed any other kind of funding from a national or local government, has to basically justify its existence by basically meeting and finding new audiences, ensuring that what it's doing is experienced and utilised and understood by as many people as possible. And I don't mean just sort of likes on Facebook or anything like that. I mean, actually physically being utilised in terms of outputs and outcomes. And of course, that's another advantage of a network, of a living network like Businet, because you can see that actually happening. It's got more viability through the working groups, through the different sessions of Businet. We can continue to promote the outputs of the third way and Digicom, and now the new one, Entre MWB, way beyond their funding life.
Taking it from a slightly different angle, Alan, it would be such a huge shame if the amount of work that has gone into these projects was not recognised. Why do all this work and not tell anyone about it? So the dissemination part, to me, partly, yes, it's exactly what you've stated, Alan. But also part of it is that if you've created something through a lot of hard work, then you should be proud to actually share that idea with other people. And why not? There's an English expression about don't hide things that you've done, basically, and that's what it would be. So if we've done something which is good, let's share it with people. If it's something that other people can use, we've got no intention within Businet to, for example, if any of our members wanted to use the product which we produce from the third way, then they will be able to use it. There's no concept of we can limit usage, etc. We want people to use it. We want people to get out there and actually use the product which we produced.
Yeah, and of course, from an assessor of centralised projects in Brussels, from that point of view, if an application doesn't show an effective dissemination strategy, it won't get funded. I mean, that's simple as that, really.
That nicely leads on to a question actually from Ria. Is there any way for institutions already to get involved in projects, in the project, either the mental health project or in the third way?
Well, not as a project partner per se, but certainly, yes, there is a possibility of people getting involved with the actual outcomes of the project, certainly. But we can't have them as project partners because obviously the partnerships have been established and they're funded via the European Commission. So, but yes, of course there is. We'd love people to be involved. I mean, that's dissemination. We've given that information, so let's help people use it.
Yeah. In fact, Dave, just to mention that we are actually testing some of the units that we've built actually. So it may be that students institutions within the Businet network can actually get involved in that testing function for us.
And also going forward, there's going to be hopefully through the established thematic network that the third way creates, there's going to be the opportunity for internships going forward. So that doesn't have to remain within the project partnership. That could be a source of a whole range of Key Action 1 mobility applications, for example, to different partners. So that in that way as well, the project won't end with just the development of the MOOC. It can extend, and one of the most effective ways of extending it is through finding new partners that wish to undertake internships. And I'm sure, well, I know there is a lot of interest amongst young people in wanting internships with third sector organisations.
Thank you. A question coming through is, speaking about European funding, is the future of EU-funded projects a concern for UK-based consulting firms or institutions in the current context? The fact that we're no longer in Erasmus, I'm guessing.
That can be answered in one word, can't it, really? Yeah, it is a concern.
And Businet, from the Businet perspective, Businet is a Belgium-based organisation. We're registered in Belgium, so although I work with Businet, it doesn't have an impact on Businet. It has an impact on me, but not on Businet, because we are a Belgian organisation.
Yeah, and I think that's the benefit for us actually being a member of the Businet network is obviously we're a UK-based firm. Our project has just been funded, so we're part of this for the next 2 years anyway. So yeah, it's vital for us to be part of a European network and a larger network in that respect. So that hopefully will change that yes into we have opportunities to work in a different way with our network.
I should mention that Businet has two types of membership. The members which are educational institutions and what we call associate members. And associate members are members who work for organisations which will support and promote the activities of Businet. And Projects Beyond Borders is one of the prime examples of one of our associate members where we work together for the good of the all of the membership, but they are an associate member as opposed to a full member. They have a slightly different role in the organisation, but we came to the conclusion a number of years ago that education institutions can't just work in isolation. There's other institutions that can assist and help for them to achieve their goals. So that's why we have the associate membership membership available.
That's great. Thank you. Another question. In fact, I'll take two questions together because you might both want to answer these together. How did COVID affect your current projects and how have you overcome any difficulties? And have there been any positive aspects? We're always talking about the negative aspects of COVID, but there may be some positive aspects that have changed the way you might do things in future that have actually worked for us.
Well, one of the things for me has been that we've met an awful lot more because of COVID. I mean, really, we had a very, very set plan about how often we would meet in terms of the original structure of the project. Because of COVID, we haven't been able to meet for the project meetings which were planned. So consequently, we're now meeting on a much more regular basis. And I think the project has moved forward probably better because of COVID in many ways. Obviously, we have missed the project meetings because they're far more intense, etc., etc. And I think would have driven the project forward in a slightly different way. But I don't think the project has suffered in the way that I think at first of all was had the fear that the projects would really suffer. But I don't think they have. And certainly I think in times of adversity, people come together probably better. And I do think we've got a very, very strong group of people working on the Third Wave project. And I think that has been encouraged or whatever you like to call it, but certainly I think we have come together because of the situation more. I don't know if you agree with that, Allan.
I mean, I would by and large. I mean, clearly the face-to-face events haven't happened, and it was the energy of that. But we now meet in a situation a bit like this. We have Zoom meetings on a monthly basis, and sometimes meetings in between that for specific topics and issues that are raised. And I guess the boot camps, the first boot camp is going to be a virtual boot camp, so we'll see how that works. But I mean, I would like to think that by the end of the project, we can have at least one face-to-face event involving students. And of course, we've learnt new skills. We're much better at Zoom now than we ever were before, and using a whole wide range of different communication platforms. Online learning has gained a greater sort of importance and emphasis as a consequence of this. So there have been positives as well as the negatives. I mean, the project we've got an extension for it now of another 6 months in the hope that in that latter phase of the project, we can do some of the face-to-face and real-time activities that we planned for. But the project has been able to continue to achieve its outputs despite COVID for exactly the reasons that David's mentioned.
I just want to bring David in there actually, because one of the other projects that that Businet has had in the last couple of weeks actually was the annual student conference, which is usually face to face, but again was handled online virtually. Do you want to mention any of the successes of that?
Yeah. We've held a student conference every year since 1997, and it's obviously always been at a conference venue. Obviously, because of COVID this year, we had to do a virtual conference, which I must admit, I think we had some reservations about beforehand, because part of the conference is about bringing students together and really getting them involved in activities and a real hands-on effect of the conference. And it helps students build relationships with students in different countries, etc. And we're a little bit concerned about that, but actually the conference went exceptionally well last week, and the students really did gel together. We used an awful lot of activities within the event so that they were having to work together, but they came together so strongly in their little groups of 5 or 15, depending on what activity they were taking on. But I think that I certainly learned an awful lot from the event, because I think the ability of people to adapt to new situations is incredible, and I think we sometimes underestimate how people can adapt and how what they can achieve in whatever situation is there. But I think it was a big learning experience for both the students, but also for the members of staff who were there last week.
Yeah. And as one of those members of staff, actually, one of the mentors of the student groups, actually, I was really surprised and encouraged how well they formed relationships, actually, when they'd never met each other. So, and I think some of the elements that were conducted virtually can be taken forward to precede future face-to-face events that make them, a more holistic event. So it was. Thank you. We've got time for one final question, which I'm going to ask Allan this question. What makes a project worth funding?
There has to be a need for it in the first instance. You know, there's got to be a pretty sound justification for it, and it's got to have a significant impact. You know, there's got to be a clear target group of beneficiaries that will benefit from the project activities. So that's those are two key things. I mean, I've also already talked about the importance of the kind of the end game. You know, the dissemination, exploitation, sustainability element, and it's got to show in terms of its likelihood for funding. It's got to have a clear kind of structure behind it, you know, a management structure, and also a structure concerning its activities as well. And indeed, when you're assessing a project, there are kind of these 4 criteria that are looked at overall. One is the design of the project, one is the strength of the partnership, one is the dissemination, exploitability, and the other is the actual justification and need for it in the first place. If you can't prove a need for the project, then it's unlikely to be funded. So that's really, really fundamental. So.
Okay. So I'm going to. This is taking us to the end of our panel discussion, brings our panel discussion to a close. I'd like to thank the panel for an interesting and stimulating discussion this afternoon. Thank you all for attending. We hope you found the session useful and informative. If you've got any further questions for our panel, or would like to continue discussion with either Allan or David or myself, you'll find us in the exhibition hall for the duration of the summit. So thank you and good afternoon.
Goodbye.
Bye now. Bye.